Yeah, I'm not going to say much, but I just want to show people what it was like um, under the overpasses along M Street in Northeast. This is the way it's what people have to kind of live in. I mean, it's hard. It's real hard. You know, you wonder where you are sometimes. I mean, this is the nation's capital. Both the Capitol and the Supreme Court are 5 blocks from here. And so we have all that power and all those resources, but 5 blocks away, this is what it looks like. All because we've normalized the fact that, you know, people who quote unquote can't afford to live here, a viable option for them is to live on the street. And for the most part, everybody's okay with that. Until the place where you're allowing them to live on the street becomes commodified and marketable. And then you want to remove these people because it's an eyesore. It brings down the value of the property. And you know, as we come out of this, what you see is REI. This used to be a parking garage. I remember when this was a parking garage. It was the cheapest parking garage in the city, one of the cheapest parking garages. You could park here all day. I remember you could park here all day for $3. And then they turned it into an REI. Right outside of this. We're going to ask our friends at REI this winter to give their neighbors some jumpsuits and some hand warmers and some toe warmers and some socks and thermal gear, because REI has all that stuff. And so let's see how well REI is willing to take care of their neighbors. And yeah, a lot of these tents were donated from REI. But REI needs to give it up anyway for being able to be a neighbor here in Northeast DC, a new neighbor. All right, y'all, just want y'all to see what it looks like.
Hello, my name is...
Hold on one second, Eric. Hey, y'all. Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. We're down here, Ward 6 Mutual Aid, Serve Your City, People for Fairness Coalition, Gonzaga Peace Club, and many others are down here today, again, on Sunday, at the NoMa tent encampments, 1st and 2nd Streets, Northeast, L and M. We stretch along all the way up to Union Station and North Capitol Street, Mass Avenue. We go around up to New York Avenue and swing around the whole neighborhood. And here today with a special friend of mine, DC renowned, world renowned, Mr. Eric Sheptock. And I'll tell a little story. Mr. Eric Sheptock and I, years ago, we're down at K Street, 1st and K Street, because the tents had started to pop up. This is probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And we tried to get some neighbors engaged and doing this work that, you know, through God's blessings and, you know, unfortunately through a lot of suffering, we have more and more people who are down here, who live here on the street, at the tent encampments. But, you know, God has a way, and he has blessed us because we have way more and more people that are prepared to do what's necessary to make sure that everybody is okay. And so while, you know, it's an unfortunate situation that brings us together, but I think it's important that we just come together and do the work that we have to do. And so Brother Eric Sheptok has been doing this work for many, many years. I met the brother probably about 10 some years ago, just doing this work in his grind, you know, always working with the unhoused and supporting people who've lived on the street. And, you know, he's been an inspiration to me for many years and a blessing. I'm glad to have him here today. I want to make sure y'all get to see him, and he's got a lot of wise words to share about this situation. So Eric, tell everybody, you know, the beginning, to start it out. How'd you get into this work, brother?
Okay, so I moved to DC in the summer of 2005. In 2006, I was staying at the Franklin School Shelter, 13th and K Northwest. That building's now being turned into the Planet Word Museum, by the way. But in June 2006, two ladies came through and told the men at the shelter that a former mayor, Anthony Williams, was going to close that shelter and opened up another shelter with half the capacity, going from 240 beds down to 120. So they got us involved in the fight. That's when I began advocating, and I've been advocating ever since, for 14 years now. And we actually stopped the closure in 2006, but the next mayor, a man named Adrian Fenty, closed the shelter in 2008.
That's right.
It sat vacant for 8 years.
That's
and
right.
then in 2016, they began to transform it into the Planet Word Museum. And so in November of 2006, one of my fellow advocates told me that I had to learn to use computers, and so I learned to use computers at 37 years old, and I've now been known for my use of computers and my thousands of Facebook friends and blog posts about homelessness and so forth and so on.
Oh, this brother's always on his computer talking some stuff, man.
Yeah, and so since then I've been involved in some other fights with DC government, primarily to get them to focus on living wage jobs and affordable housing. Since 2008, I should say, when they closed Franklin School Shelter, they began permanent supportive housing here in DC. It was in other cities before that, but it came to DC in 2008. And since then, they've been focused on helping the most vulnerable homeless, which is I can't argue against that. However, they hope to at some time, finish that and move on to the less vulnerable people, but that's been a slow process. And so I've focused mainly on living wage jobs and affordable housing, and the city has done very little in that respect.
Nothing.
It's been just a token effort, if you will. And so
50% AMI.
And I
MFI.
So the CCMV shelter, Community for Creative Nonviolence, I began to fight around that. I had been hearing that the city might close it back around 2010, 2011, and they said in 2016 it will probably close. So I asked some questions. I filed the FOIA request with the Freedom of Information Act with the federal government. I got information about the building and who owns it and so forth. I brought it to DC Council, Jim Graham, who has since passed, and he began a task force that lasted for 9 months based on my research. And the task force talked about the future of the shelter and its residents. All they came up with were 17 guiding principles. If a mayor closes that building, then they should do these 17 things first. They included having a combination of replacement shelter and replacement housing before the shelter closes, putting the shelter or housing near metro station, housing the disabled and elderly first, and so forth and so on. That legislation, that got turned into legislation, but then it was kind of put on the shelf and not acted on. But now we have development being completed across the road from the CCMV shelter, so that shelter might soon be closed. Hopefully,
You're coming.
Hopefully the mayor will use those guiding principles if they close the CCNV shelter. But now our biggest issue is the ending of the eviction moratorium on the last day of this year.
Urgent crisis.
Yes, and there are going to be millions of evictions
across the country.
In most cases, people will probably do some couch surfing. As many as 40 million people could lose their place, and maybe 30 million will do some couch surfing, and then we may have 10 million more who have no place to couch surf. Currently, nationally, we have about 1 million homeless people at any one time. About 4 million in the course of a year, about 1 million at any one time. And so that's going to stress the homeless services system, having 10 times as many people come in, all at one time.
Well, let's throw out some numbers. So if conservatively we say 10% of people in Washington D.C. are impacted, and they don't have that couch surfing option, then we're talking about 70,000 people.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's even be more conservative. Let's say 5%, so that's 35,000 people.
Right.
And so let me tell you something. Like over the past 5 months, we started out at 50 bags for 2 streets where we have the most congregate level of tents. Okay, right here. And now we're covering up to 100 tents just in this area. Okay, so our numbers have steadily increased. Now we're not just out here on Sundays. On Thursdays, we're at Virginia Avenue on Capitol Hill along the 695 highway entrance, the access points, the overpass. On Fridays, we're downtown, 24th and 23rd on E Street, G Street, Pennsylvania Avenue, under the tunnels, where there's a growing number of tents, so about 100 tents just in that area. And then on Saturdays, we're up in New Jersey, in Ward 6, abutting Ward 2, Uptown Shaw. We're up there now, and they have an additional 20 tents. And then the increase here on Sundays in NoMa, really starting out with about 50 tents, and now we're up to 100 tents. And we know this because we provide personal supply bags to our unhoused neighbors, and we've had a steady increase in the need, in the demand for an increase in the supplies. So it's growing. I mean, a 5% hit would be devastating to the infrastructure here in Washington, D.C. I mean, devastating.
Right. And I didn't realize how many tent cities the city had until my job got the contract to provide porta potties. I work for an event rental company, tents, tables, chairs, porta potties for outdoor events.
This porta potty right here, right?
Yes.
Right behind us.
That's my company. Gotta go now. And so we have porta potties by about 10 homeless tent cities. And so I know for a fact that the homeless need lots of toilet paper because we service them 3 times a week. We put in 2 or 3 rolls, depending on how big the roller is, the dispenser is, and they're always running out, and they're always using things like shirts and pants and other things.
We're giving out 195 rolls of toilet paper per week, 200 rolls of toilet paper per week to our work with the various encampments throughout the city. And that's where we are right now. And the winter months are coming. And so we have to think about creating a new supply list for new items to ensure that nobody freezes to death out here, right? And to make sure people are as comfortable as possible. And so, I'm just going to ask the audience to please support this work because we know with the eviction moratorium about to end, it could have devastating impacts on what's to be. Now, Brother Eric's being called. He's got work to do.
But I'll say this too, though, that we've run into a new problem recently. It's getting darker earlier, and the porta potties are not lit. I mean, they have not sunroofs, skylights, but at night that doesn't help, and so we do need to have lighting facilities in there that they're not being paid for by the government, which is paying for the toilets, and so we do need to be innovative in some way. We did have a unit that was partially burned recently. I thought maybe the person was lighting a candle or something and didn't watch it and it fell over or something. It could be something else, but I'll leave it there and say that one way or the other, people do need to put lights in there at night, and so we need to address that need as well.
All right, brother. Listen, we'll figure it out. I promise you that. We'll figure something out. Hey, man, thank you so much for all your years of being dedicated to our people here who live on the street, our families, our friends, our neighbors, our loved ones. Hey, it's just always a blessing to see you, man.
All right, thank you.
Good seeing you, Eric. All right, y'all. We got tons of work to do. That's Eric's porta potty right there. And look, I'm telling you, the increase in the tents is apparent, week to week. And so, we have to be more aggressive and working together to get the necessary goods to support, the folks who live out here in the street. All right, y'all. Work with us. Serve your city. Ward 6 Mutual Aid. Have a great week. Talk to y'all soon.